the advantage of living with the worship leader. So I get to hear songs all week long as she's preparing, setting them up. So I've been worshiping to that song all week. A sermon sometimes is preached just as well by a song as it is by a sermon, right, or by a pastor. And that's one of those that just teaches us we're all God's. His call is to be all His. And that's really the topic of Romans chapter 12. We're called to be living sacrifices. That feels a little weird to us, doesn't it? Living sacrifice. Do those words really go together? They're almost an oxymoron in that they're two terms that appear to be opposites of each other. But they're really more of a paradox in that they don't say the opposite of each other. It's just a truth that evades our minds a little bit. It takes us a while to think it through, to understand what Paul is trying to say to us here, to be living sacrifices. The idea of paradox was not lost on the people of Paul's day. In fact, Jesus used paradox several times. Luke chapter 9 is one of those times when he says, whoever wants to save their life will lose it, and whoever wants to lose their life for my sake will find it. Or later in Luke 9, he says, the greatest among you has to be the least, or the least is the greatest. And so Paul is taking some of that idea and applying it to the whole of our lives, to be living sacrifices. To be serious about following Christ to the degree that we aren't just compartmentalizing, we aren't just doing some things, but we are offering our entire life to Him. Anybody know the name Steve Palermo? You might have heard about him in the news a couple of weeks ago. He was an umpire in Major League Baseball. He just passed away a couple of weeks ago. He was considered to be one of the greatest umpires in the game. Most people thought he was very fair, very accurate in his calls. One day after a game, he was at a restaurant, and he was eating with some friends, and they noticed a scuffle going on outside, and it turns out that these two ladies were being robbed. And so he and his friends went out there, and they apprehended one of the robbers. Two of them got away. Well, after the dinner was over, they were standing outside talking to each other, and these two men that had gotten away came by in a car, took a gun, and shot it into the crowd, and Steve Palermo was the one that the bullet hit. He was partially paralyzed from the waist down for the rest of his life. The doctor said that he would never be able to walk again. But he defied those odds, and he was able to walk with a cane. And he was never able to go back to umpiring. His goal was to get back to the game. He even said, I want to go out there and get booed again. But he was never able to be back in the game, but he did a lot in helping train future umpires. That was a sacrifice that he made. But it was not fully the sacrifice that Paul is talking about when he calls us to become living sacrifices. The people of Paul's day, they understood sacrifice, but they understood it in the religious context of killing and offering a bloody sacrifice on the altar to atone for their sins. Or they might have thought about it in a military setting, much as we are talking about today in this Memorial Day weekend, that they would go out and offer their life for the safety of their families, of their city, or of their country. But Paul is talking about more than one-time sacrificial acts, but he's talking about living a life as a sacrifice to God. And so we don't think of sacrifice all the time as living. We think of it as dying. But God is calling us as Christians. Now, yes, we need to be prepared to die for our faith, and there will be some in this world that do. There are being Christians martyred all over the world for their faith. In fact, more people are being martyred in today's world than has ever taken place in history. And yet, though some will die for their faith, many more of us are called to live for our faith, to live our lives out as an expression of who Jesus is in our lives. So as Christians, we should not be in a hurry to die. We should be in a hurry to live for Christ, to care for the world around us that He's placed us in. And so Paul says that we are to offer our bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to Him. And so we live our lives out in a holy manner as we are belonging to God, as our lives are set apart for His work. We don't just do things to try to appease God, but we offer our lives set apart for whatever purpose He has in our lives, anytime, anywhere, for any purpose. Here's one way to think of it as being set apart or holy and pleasing to God. I played the violin for a long time. I think most of you know that. So when I was in high school, I played the violin, but I also played football. And it drove my teacher absolutely batty that I would play football and risk hurting myself and not being able to play the violin. Well, sure enough, when I was playing football, I broke my thumb. And it didn't heal right, so I had to have it operated on. And so I had this cast that came down from below my elbow, and my thumb stuck out like this. And I had to have that cast on for 3 months because it was having trouble healing. It's hard to hold the bow on a violin like this. But I was getting ready to audition for All Northwest Orchestra, and I needed to play. So I would put my bow in my hand, and I'd saw away, play. And fortunately enough, I actually made it into that orchestra. I don't know how that happened other than God's grace, but I made it in there, and my life went on. Well, I went to college, and I went into my master's program, and my teachers, my violin professors, I'd come in, and they'd look at my hands, they'd look at my fingernails, and every once in a while they'd say, "You've been working on your car again, haven't you?" Yeah, I had to admit, yes, I had to fix my brakes, or I had to change an alternator, I had to do something, and it drove them batty that I would work on my car and let my hands get banged around and do things. Now, here's the thing. I love to play the violin. I'm so glad Tori's not in here today because I wouldn't want her to... Okay, she's over with kids? Okay, good. Don't let her hear this sermon. She's one of my violin students. I love to play the violin. But in a sense, my violin playing is not holy, because I have not totally devoted myself to violin. I have done things that are contrary to good violin playing. I have done things that I shouldn't do to be the best violinist that I can be. There's just a lot of other things in my life that I want to do, and so I take the risk of not being absolutely holy in my violin playing. But that can't work in our relationship with God. We cannot serve God and then just go out and do the other things that are on our agenda to do. And so in a sense, when we become living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God, we're saying, okay, no more football, no more working on my car, I am devoting myself to violin, or however that applies to you in your circumstances. But I am taking my life and I am wholly devoting it to God and to God alone. And Paul says this is your spiritual or proper act of worship. Now, I think we all know that worship isn't just about the songs we sing. It isn't just about the latest song or the old hymn or the hellfire and brimstone sermon or kneeling or standing. Those are moments of worship for us. They are expressions of worship, but they take a distant second to offering my life as a life of worship. Worship is actually, in the Old English, worthship. When we worship God, we are giving Him the worth that He deserves. And we do that by singing and by different things, but we do it more so by living our lives out as a lifestyle of worship, which means we're available to Him, which means in everything we do as we offer it to God, we are in a sense worshiping Him. We were just talking about that in membership class this morning, and I have a little statement in there. Anything you offer to God, whether it's going to work, whether it's raising your children, and even if it's changing a dirty diaper, you do it as an act of worship to God out of love for that child, and it is all a lifestyle of worship that we live in. And then Paul says, he goes on to say, do not conform to the pattern of this world. Now, pattern suggests a consistency, right? Without consistency, there is no pattern. The world has a very consistent message. What is that message? Feedback. What is the world's message? Do whatever you want. Do your me. Selfishness. Get what I can get. Immediate gratification. Pride. Arrogance. That's the message of the world. Paul's saying, do not conform to the pattern of this world. Do not conform to the message that the world continues to send you. Do not let the world put you into its mold. We as Christians live differently. We as Christians should live differently. We don't always. Christians should live differently. They should act differently. They should think differently. It means, really, I'm not even so much talking about the things that we shouldn't be doing, but what are the things we should be doing? You know, we really should not be okay with people walking in spiritual darkness and just letting them continue to walk that way. We should be sharing our faith. We should be telling our story. We should be inviting them into God's kingdom. We should not be okay with people who are hungry and people who are homeless. We should be doing something about it. We can do our part in helping and ministering to people. We should not be okay with people all across the world drinking poisoned water because they don't have a good water source to drink from. There's something we can help do about it. We shouldn't be okay with entire ethnic populations being wiped out or kids being sold into sex slavery. There are things that we can do to minister to those people. As living sacrifices, we are simply called wherever we are and whatever we see God doing to involve ourselves in that. It doesn't mean we can fix everything. It doesn't mean we can solve all of the world's problems. It means as individuals, wherever we are, our radar is on. We're looking. We're asking God, where do you want me to serve in this world? Where do you want me to serve in this situation? How can I minister to the people around me? And we step into what God is already doing in people's lives, wherever we are. We don't pick and choose. We don't say, well, that one's for me and that one's not for me. We listen to God's heart and we respond to it because we are constantly living our lives out for God's purposes and for His will. And then Paul says, be transformed by the renewing of your minds. So the Greek word for transformed is metamorpho, I think is how you would say it. It's our word for metamorphosis. So we are consistently morphing into God's ways, into the mind of Christ, into who God wants us to be. It is a lifelong pursuit. So to be transformed is not just to change certain behaviors. It's not just to change our appearance, but it is a change at the very essence, the very core of who we are. We ask God not just take something away from me or just change me because I don't like something about myself. What we need to be asking for is, God, will you change me at the very core of who I am? Change me from the depth of my soul inside out. That's how we become those living sacrifices. I remember when I was pretty young, in grade school somewhere, And I was at my home church, and it was on a Sunday night, and there was a gentleman that came and visited that service. He was invited by one of the members of the church. And the gist that I got from that whole situation, I wasn't, intimately involved in it. I was young, but this gentleman had served God at some point younger in his life, and then had walked away from that relationship with Christ, and then now was wanting to renew that relationship with him. So at the end of the service, the pastor gave an altar call, and this guy goes down and he kneels at the altar, and some people come and pray around him, and I'm overhearing all of this. I'm seeing this, and the value of just being a part of that is something that I treasure, to see God working in people's lives even when I was young. But I was just kind of watching what was going on, and there were people, and he was praying, and I could overhear his prayers. God, change me. I want to be in relationship with you. I love you. I want to recommit my life to you. And there was something that was really bothering him, and it really wasn't the people at the altar telling him he needed to do this. This was something that he was bothered by, that he wanted to fix in his life, and that was that he smoked cigarettes. And so he takes this pack of cigarettes out of his shirt pocket, and he puts them down on the altar, and he says, God, change me. I don't want to smoke anymore. I don't want this addiction in my life. Would you change me so that I don't have the desire to smoke anymore? And he left those cigarettes right there on the altar, and he left. And I'm thinking, God, you did an amazing thing in this guy's life. Well, about a week later, I'm at the church, and I'm outside, and I look down at the street corner, and here's this guy in the corner smoking a cigarette. Now, I have to admit I was disappointed in him, but I was actually more disappointed in God. Because I'm thinking, God, I heard this guy, and from all I can tell, he was very serious that he didn't want that addiction anymore, and he asked you to take that addiction away from him, and you didn't do it. What's going on here? Well, as I grew and matured a little bit, I began to understand that it wasn't that God didn't or couldn't release him from that addiction. It also wasn't that he didn't have enough desire or enough faith to do it. It's that his mind hadn't been renewed yet. He was still thinking in old patterns. He was still stuck in an addictive mindset. And so it just drew him back into it. Now, we can stand back and we can judge and say, well, I guess that guy just wasn't really serious, or he just didn't have the strength or the personal fortitude to be able to quit. Or we can begin to realize that he couldn't renew his mind because he didn't have anybody walking with him to help him renew his mind. He didn't have a core group of people who loved him and who walked through Scripture with him and listened to him and responded to him and allowed God to do something new in his life. Folks, we have some responsibility to help people renew their minds. God has renewed yours, many of yours. God has done some incredible things in yours as you have attended church, as you have been discipled by people, if you have been in Bible studies and different things. Folks, we need to be out there walking with people and helping them renew their minds too. It's even harder in today's world because there's so much going on in our society that draws people into this world's message, that's calling them into this selfish addictions that our world says is fine. It's okay. Don't worry about it. We know better. We know how harmful those things are. We have to be willing to walk with them. We've got several people here at Turning Leaf who are walking alongside. I call it mentoring them. I don't tell them I call it that because it scares them to death when I say that word. But that's really what they're doing. They're walking in a mentoring relationship with somebody or a few people, just being their friend, walking alongside them, answering some questions along the way, and being able to say, I don't know the answer to that one. We'll have to figure that one out together. But we need to be doing more of that so people can be renewed in their minds, and that they aren't continually drawn back into the world's ways of doing things. So this fall, we're going to be offering some mentoring training. Maybe we better think of another word. Better not. No, we're going to use mentoring because that's what it is. And I want you to be thinking and praying about that. I'm counting on a bunch of you being involved in that and taking the risk to walk alongside somebody. And just in a friendship basis. Not a cookie cutter approach, not this is the curriculum and this is what you have to do, but in your setting and in the personality of you and that person walking alongside them and helping them. Don't forget about this. Pray about this. And let God do something in you. So why do we do all this? We're supposed to be living sacrifices. Well, I guess that's my duty, right? I have to do that because I'm a Christian. Well, that's not really what this passage says. There's really two reasons why we do this. Paul ends this passage by saying, then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good and pleasing and perfect will. So part of the reason that we offer our lives to God is because we want to know God. We want to know his will for our lives. And it suggests that then you will be able to, that if you won't be able to, unless we get out of this worldly thinking and get into God's thinking. But the other reason that we do it is actually part of verse 1 that I skipped over. In view of God's mercy, offer your bodies as living sacrifices to God. In view of God's mercy. Have you experienced mercy? We ought to be standing up and cheering. I have experienced God's mercy. I am hopeless without God's grace and mercy in my life. In view of God's mercy, I willingly offer my life to you, God. Because I can't get to God without his mercy. I can't have a relationship with God without his mercy in my life. I would be hopelessly lost. I would be a disaster without God's mercy in my life. In view of God's mercy, I willingly offer my body as a living sacrifice to God, holy and pleasing to him. I think you guys know the name, no, I can't think of it. Maybe I don't know it. John Newton wrote the hymn Amazing Grace. When he was a kid, he ran off and he joined a slave ship. And he worked on that ship. But his life went into a downward spiral. He even said himself that he ran away and joined this trade so that he could send to his fill. He wanted to just do everything in life. He wanted to try everything. He didn't have a thought about God. He didn't care about consequences. He just wanted to do his own thing. And so he goes on this slave ship and he works for a while, but his life is in this downward spiral where not only does he suffer the consequences of all his sin, but he actually ends up becoming a slave on a ship rather than working on the ship. And eventually he escapes from that, but he goes right back to another slave ship and continues in the slave trading business. Well, one time he was on a voyage and this storm hits and everybody's pretty much thinking they're going to die. The captain sends him down to the hold to pump water out. And he's down there for 3 days straight, pumping water trying to keep the ship afloat. And he just knows that at any second the ship is gonna break and water's gonna come pouring in and he's gonna die. Well, miraculously, they survived that trip. And they get back to port. And when he got back to port, he walked away from that ship. He walked away from the slave trade business. He committed his life to God. And eventually he became a great minister and a great hymn writer. And he wrote that hymn, Amazing Grace. How sweet the sound that saved. He uses the word wretch like me. I can relate pretty well to that. There's another hymn we used to sing. I can't remember all the words, but one of the verses ended, to such a worm as I, at the cross for so life. I relate to that. I know people who get upset. Well, I'm not a worm, I'm a person. Well, maybe you are. I'm a wretch. I'm a worm. I am hopeless without Christ. He recognized God's grace and God's mercy in his life. And he was not having any trouble once he saw God's mercy in his life, walking away from his old life and offering his life as a living sacrifice to God. But we're going to sing that hymn with the chorus that goes along with it, because I think it fits so well. My chains are gone. I've been set free. As we sing it, I want you to consider, what is your life about? Are you becoming a living sacrifice? Or is your life really just pretty much about you? Pretty much about your agenda and your plans and your goals without having included God in that? And God can do a lot in us all at once. And as you're singing that song, there may be some things that God also is going to say to you, and some things that he wants to do in you. So I would just ask you to prayerfully sing this song and let God minister to you and let him change you from the core, the very essence of who you are, and help you to become that living sacrifice that he calls all of us to be. Will you stand? Darryl, will you bring up the scripture that we read at the beginning, the whole version of Romans 12:1 and 2. I want us to read that together. Read along with me. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. Amen. I pray that that scripture sticks with you this week, and that we all learn to live it out. I just want to remind you that tonight we will have open gym. It starts at 5:30. Anybody that wants to come and just relax and have some fun, you're welcome to be here. At the end of the service, we're going to say our benediction in just a moment. But at the end of the service, if there's anybody that would like to be prayed for or would like to talk a little bit about what we've experienced this morning, I'll be available, and some of our staff and prayer team will be available to speak to you if you'd like. Let's read our benediction together. And now may all praise be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. God bless you. Have a great weekend.